Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to answer the question, is Intel's 5.6% dividend yield safe? I know that's attractive to a lot of passive income investors. A lot of dividend income investors are looking at Intel stock and saying, I could get a pretty good dividend yield investing in this tech stock. So let's look at its important critical metrics to determine if this dividend yield is safe. The first thing I'm going to look at is the payout ratio. The payout ratio measures the percentage of earnings a company pays out in dividends. If this ratio is above 100%, that would be incredibly unsustainable. The lower the payout ratio, the better in terms of dividend sustainability. And at 44%, I would say this is a pretty sustainable ratio for Intel's dividend payout ratio. The next thing I want to look at is revenue growth on a quarterly basis. And I don't just want to look at the most recent quarter. I want to go back all the way several years to look at what really is the underlying fundamental prospects of this company, and is it going through something dramatic right now? And for Intel, it is going through something dramatic, a significant decline in revenue growth in the recent 4 or 5 quarters as consumers have stopped buying computers because they bought so many in the initial stages of the pandemic that they're good, right? If you bought a computer in 21 or 2020, you're probably not going to want to buy one for the next few years, at least until 23 or 24, maybe 25. So for that reason, Intel's revenue growth has stalled. It has decreased considerably, but going back longer term, you can see that it had a steady upward trend in terms of revenue growth. So I expect it to bounce back once this near-term headwind alleviates. Another thing I want to look at is the fundamentals of the business, right? How are its total expenses versus its revenue? How much does it cost the company to make a sale, and does it earn a good margin on that sale, and is that margin expanding? And from Intel, I do see healthy trends here if I exclude the most recent few quarters. I see revenue expanding nicely, and I see total expenses not growing all that much, right? And this is what I like to see as an investor. I like to see expenses growing as slow as possible, but with revenue expanding as fast as possible. And Intel was demonstrating this up until the most recent quarter. So this is good news for Intel stock investors for the long term. Near term headwinds, of course. Another thing I want to look at is cash flow from operations. Are these profits bringing in cash flows? And for Intel, the answer is yes. Cash flow from operations was increasing if you ignored the fluctuations. If you draw a long-term trend line here, you can see a nice upward trend. Of course, again, excluding the recent crash of the company's revenues, profits, and cash flow. And finally, I like to look at valuation. I never like to pay too much of a premium price for a stock. I want to pay a fair price for an excellent business. And Intel is certainly not expensive, trading at a price to earnings of 7.9. Going back all the way 2014, it's near the cheapest it has sold for in this entire time. So the stock is cheap. So if you're thinking about buying Intel stock for the dividend and worried about is the dividend safe, this is another thing I would add to your questioning, your research is, am I paying too much for this stock, right? So I know it's not directly related to is the dividend safe, but I wanted to add this final slide here, this final metric, just so investors can see that the stock is not expensive. You're not paying too much for this stock, right? So, but to answer that question, is Intel's dividend safe? Yes, the dividend is safe, right? We saw the dividend payout ratio was not very high. It was only 44%, and the company was growing earnings, right? Revenue was growing, expenses were relatively flat, and we also saw the cash flow from operations was steadily rising. So longer term, the company is doing well. Near term, we did see headwinds. But that should alleviate in the longer term, and the headwinds were not so strong to put that dividend payment in question, at least not of yet. So if you're interested in buying Intel stock for its dividend and worried if it's safe or not, Intel's dividend is safe. All right, thank you for watching. I will see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.